Another Telling It Like It Is. My name is Jade Alberts, the founder of Peer Guidance, and I am live from downtown at the Marriott Hotel, where we're hosting a little get together of 40 of our closest friends to talk about the tech and ecosystem and how we make it better and more collaborative. And I'm really excited about how today's going to go. But there's no better way to kick off a day with than having a great conversation. But I also want to give a quick shout out to the Helm Cash Flow app for the sponsorship. They predict your future cash flow balance, so you manage your cash flow and make better decisions faster. I mean, that is something that we are probably going to get into today, talking with our guest Al-Karim, the founder of Propra. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks so much for having us on.
Oh, I'm excited. You know, we've met a few times. We've talked about it. You're in the TNT process right now. We had a little chinwag about that and how that's going. And before I get into the questions, I just kind of want to chat about that a little bit, because I think you brought some really valid points there about some of the benefits. And you said, "Oh man, I wish I would have done it earlier." So, tell us about that process and why you think you should have done it earlier.
Yeah, so I think the TNT program and definitely this will obviously hopefully sway the process. No, I'm just joking. Actually, for us, the TNT process was very helpful because I think through the application process helps you really think about what are the elements of your business. And when you're doing these applications, it really helps you think not only what are the elements, but how do you tell you the right story? I think that's the first thing. I think the second was doing the pitch, right? Yeah. Getting out there, putting yourself out there, trying to tell your story really quickly, and in front of an audience that has such diverse perspective. I think when you're talking one-on-one with folks, it's easier to tell the story because of a bit about their background. You can learn about them and then curate sort of the positioning of the story and try and make it relevant to them. But when you're doing it for a big audience, so I think there's good practice there, learning about how do you talk about your business in a really succinct way. And I think the last piece is the diligence conversations have been great because you've got thoughtful people pressure testing elements of your business. And I think that's really helpful because when people come from, like when I look at the group of folks that we did our diligence with, really diverse perspectives, but also they invested in a handful of different deals. And so they bring that thinking. And so in that hour, or 45 minutes, we were really peppered from all angles, which is perfect practice for us.
Well, that's good. And I mean, and doing it live is so different than doing it in Zoom.
Very much. We can't edit this later, so.
Exactly. And it's not about the pitch anyway. And I mean, it's about diving in and doing the due diligence and meeting such a diverse group of investors, which I know you talked about. But I mean, that also comes into, your business and why you founded why you wanted to found Propra and helping people and become renters and rentees become closer and have a better relationship, to be fewer problems. So why don't you share how you founded? You share your story.
Yeah, well, and I should have corrected this. It's actually co-founded because I have a co-founder, Craig. My apologies. He's a gem, and I think without him, I don't think we would be here. But the real story begins is I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, really focused on real estate, and I think that really set me up for thinking about real estate as a space. I was working for a consulting firm for a while, and while I was on a project overseas, I realized there was an interesting opportunity to rent my apartment out because I thought, why pay a mortgage and condo fees, et cetera? Maybe someone else can pay for it. So I flew home, and overnight I became a landlord. And I thought this was actually very interesting. But what's interesting is when you add units and then you have to manage all those units, that's where it gets really hard. And honestly, I didn't enjoy it. I didn't enjoy the function of property management because there's manual processes, there's a bunch of workflows, you're trying to track down people, you're trying to get back in touch with folks. I think when you think about think about our consumer experience of how we engage with technology, right? Even, Canada Post, Uber Eats, Skip, you're getting updates constantly. Like maybe you don't know where your pizza, like you can't get your pizza now, but you know where it is. If you know where it is, it's on the street, it's in the oven. That gives you peace of mind. How do you bring that same thing to the landlord and tenant experience? And that didn't exist. And so when Craig and I met, we thought, how do we do something unique in the prop tech space and really focus on residential? When we think about the scale of residential, this problem, there are 5 million apartments in Canada, 5 million rentals. In the US, 50 million rentals. A third of the Canadian population lives in rental accommodations, and it's only going to get bigger, especially with inflation, interest rates increasing. mortgage stress tests getting more complex. So it matters, and it matters to a lot of Canadians. And so we were really excited about this, and we thought, you know what, let's see what we can do.
And I say this a lot. It's amazing how an idea starts with a problem, or somebody like yourself that says, man, like this sucks. I hate this.
Terrible.
And then boom,
Yeah.
here you are. You got a business.
Exactly. And
just like that, no trials, no ups and downs, no issues, no bumps in the road.
Well, we'll talk about the emotional roller coaster later. But I think the one thing that we love about this is that it's a very obvious problem, right? Like everyone understands it. Like, as soon as you had to live in your own, your own place, even if it's a student living like in res or a dorm, they all get it, right? Yeah. And that to me is really helpful, or because it helps just explain the story, and it's obvious. And so you're not explaining the problem. It's a very common problem, and everyone's experienced it. And so that makes then we get into the how are we solving the problem, not what is the problem. So that for us is, thank God, makes it much easier to do this. But you're right. It's amazing how with just a problem it creates an opportunity.
Well, let's speak about that. How does your app solve that problem? Like, I mean, I know there's been people that have tried this before and gone through it before, but what makes you guys so unique, and why you've been able to actually, make this a business so far?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's a couple things. One is I talked about the consumer experience, right? So as consumers, we're used to updates in different formats, right? And we get these push notifications constantly. And so how do we bring, when we think about my co-founder Craig's experience, he grew the technology team significantly at Skip. He introduced, a lot of this cloud and AI technology, which is really how, what we know that experience to be. But if as consumers, we know the typical experience to be this, why can't this be the same for our home? And so that's the core driver, is how do we bring modern technology to the relationship of the landlord and the resident? And so the how is really, from the property manager's angle, is can they run their business from a single browser tab? And when we say that, it's really simple, right? Because we understand what that means, right? It's not having, if I look at my Chrome right now, I've got maybe like 15 little tabs open, right? Because of the many things I'm managing. But could you just manage it from one browser tab? And that's the goal, right? Is how do we bring simplicity to this? Because there's a lot of manual processes. There's a lot of point solutions. We talked to a company in Saskatchewan a couple of weeks back. They use 8 different softwares that they've Frankenstein together, right? How much time is wasted? Where is the single source of truth? And so with our platform, we have all of that information in one.
So let's talk about that platform a little bit. So, I mean, let's say that I'm going to come and I'm going to, Al-Karim, I'm going to rent your apartment, and
sure.
And let's explain exactly how that process works.
Yeah. So when we think about the journey, I'll talk about the platform from a slightly different perspective. Let's say you're moving into a unit, right? So we need to do a move-in inspection, right? And then when you leave, we need to do a move-out inspection, right? And so that is already kind of one core module of our platform. But let's talk about the move-out process, because then you can understand the different elements. Well, we have a move-out inspection, and it's beside the move-in inspection. So now you can see period over period what has happened. Well, let's say there's, drywall damage, right? Well, that needs to become a maintenance task. And so now we can put that into our maintenance module. And there's a series of tasks related, especially with drywall. You may need to cut that out. You may need to replace it, maybe dry it if it's wet. You need to then mud it, sand it, prime it, paint it, maybe paint it twice. Those are multiple tasks. And with those are, different scheduling. So now we can document these things. And then the last piece is the accounting piece. Is how do we track the materials and labor costs along the journey, right? And so now with our inspection solution, our maintenance solution, our accounting solution, and our CRM, we now know that Jade Alberts is in Marriott Towers, Unit 1201. Doubt you're staying at the hotel. And we have all that information saved. So think about this. When you scale, and you've been doing it for many years, we talked to a guy in Toronto. He's been doing property management for about 40 years, for about 150 units. How do you remember all that information in your head? And now you don't have to, because we have a single source of truth. We had a customer, which is very interesting. We had a customer send us some data recently, and there was 3 Excel files. One was called Final, the other one was called Final, and the other one was called Master Final. And so how do you remember? And these are really common problems that we're just tackling really simply.
It sounds like it's the early days of the internet, or early days, right? Spreadsheets everywhere, right? Like,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
And, I mean, obviously, technology has made that easy and made it great. So, how are you getting out there and finding the people? Like, I mean, it's probably really hard to find these one-off, landlords that maybe have 1 to 10 or 1 to 50, whatever the categories are, or it's probably easy to find the 500, 5,000 plus because everyone's banging on their door. So, what type of process are you using as a company to really get in front of these landlords and
Yeah, so I think there's a couple key things that we're doing, right? The first thing that we're doing is we spend a lot of time understanding who our ideal customer is, right? And what we learned really quickly was our ideal customer falls around 100 doors, 100 units, 100 apartments. And we say doors because it could include like a single family home. It could include like someone who's got a home on top and another suite on the bottom. So there's a lot of flexibility in the naming. And what we realize is about 100 doors to about 1,000 doors, but it's not exclusive, right? We have a customer who has 10 doors, and we have another one who's got over 6,000. And so what we've learned in the process is each of these folks kind of engage differently. And so finding them is actually very interesting, right? So we have a sort of three-part strategy. In terms of getting out there, one thing is we just do the basic typical internet research. We find companies, we get in front of them. And we've been really fortunate to have a great access to these companies, a lot of positive reception. And when we explain what we're doing, people want to talk to us. Thank God. That's a good signal, right? The second thing that we've been doing is we've been going to almost the virtual and physical water coolers of where people gather. So it's industry events, trade shows, but also online events, and trying to get in front of the different population and meet them. And we're really about listening and helping and not convincing. So we don't push the platform on anyone. Our goal is really about how do we make sure there's a fit, right? Because the worst thing is someone signs up and then they're like, we don't need this. We've wasted their time. We've wasted our time. And so that's quite inefficient. And then the last thing that we're doing is we're getting some inbound traffic, not only through sort of building a social presence, but we've also written some papers sharing ideas of some of the things that we've learned as we've talked to people. So we wrote a paper around profitability because a lot of customers have said, hey, this is our problem, this is our problem. So we've responded to those problems with some ideas around how to drive profitability. And also another paper around trends in 2022 in the residential rental space. And something is just to remember, because there's always so many things going on. And so we tried to synthesize that into a short PDF for folks to read and hopefully can help them grow their businesses.
No, and to access those, you can just head to the Propra website. It's in the comment section. Just click on it. You'll be able to access it there. I went and read them. I think they're great. And again, sharing knowledge in your industry is very important. I also had a question here from LinkedIn from Paul. He basically asked, are there any privacy issues on this platforms with owners and tenants?
I think that's a great question. I think privacy is really important, especially because we're considering that we know owner information, we know building information, we know tenant information, we know where someone lives. And so we've built a very, very thoughtful and secure platform to ensure that we protect people's data. And I wish I had my co-founder here, Craig. He could unpack some of the technical elements of that. But that's a very important piece to us, is how do we make sure that we're protective of people's data, and so that even some of the information around the costs or maintenance of a unit, that's private. And so how do we ensure that there are effectively walls between our customers, and that we ensure that we know who has access from our side, so we can also ensure that there are protections in place. And so we spent a lot of time thinking about that, because these are people's homes and these are people's assets and investment properties. And for a lot of folks, especially some of these smaller players, they're doing this on the side of their desk. They have a full-time job. They may have, had an apartment. It's grown into a second. And we've heard that this is a very, very common Canadian story. And so we're really thoughtful about making sure that we don't expose anyone and put someone in a risky position. So great question. Thank you.
And I think it's just, I mean, that's what I love about being live, right? You get these questions that pop in and you can share them, and we can't get to all of them usually, but I think that was an important one. It wasn't in our little list that we discussed before,
Yeah.
but I can't believe it wasn't, because I think that's such an important part. I mean, I know my privacy, my phone, my everything. I don't want anybody to know what's going on, even though they can Google and find Jade Alberts, and there's lots of crap out there. But I mean, that it is what it is. I think I think I'm glad that question was asked, because I think that's an extremely important point.
Yeah. And I think we're also acutely aware of things like cybersecurity, to think about, how do we make sure that our users are protected as well? And so Craig has gone and done some extensive work to ensure that our platform it has various levels of protection, to be thoughtful about people's data, right? Because data privacy is such a sensitive subject now.
Yeah.
And, you hear of all these sort of scarier stories out there. And so, we've done some extensive work to put those protections in place.
No, that's good. I mean, the reassurance is something that's extremely important when, when you're selling it to the renter or the rentee. It doesn't really matter who it is. So, and I mean, and that just gets involved, right? I mean, it's something that I think that has to be there, and it has to be secure. And obviously having yourself and your co-founder Craig as tech people, and obviously it comes across, and we've had many conversations, that it's authentic, and it's obviously something that's top of the list for you guys.
Yeah. And I think also on that subject is that Craig and I come from a place where we've had great mentors and training. And so we know that feedback's a gift, right? And so we're constantly improving this process, learning how do we do this better? How do we improve what we are doing? So the work is never done. It's, how do we keep on raising the bar on a daily basis?
Yeah. And you know what, you talked about that mentor-mentee type thing, and we touched on the Startup TNT at the beginning about the importance of having that community. And again, we had the Alberta Technology Symposium. We went to Uniting the Prairies. Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, all of us are very, very similar, very, very collaborative. It's awesome.
Very much.
And I think that's such an important thing as a founder. I kind of want to touch on that, because it is something that one of the taglines I use, and I talked about it actually at the pitch night, saying asking for help is not a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
And when you're out there and you're running this journey, and maybe some people don't have a co-founder, and it's not alone, what is your journey, and what have you found that has been very beneficial for, let's talk making your startup, your business, in Calgary?
Yeah. So I think about a couple things, right? One is, I think, first of all, that co-founder relationship is so important. Because I think, this is in addition to your partner, if you're dating someone, married someone, whatever. My wife, godsend, because I can talk to her about this, and she comes on this emotional roller coaster with me. But it's about your co-founder, partner, whoever you're working with, your team even. How do you rely on each other to go through this journey together, right? And so I think that's a key piece, right? I think the other exciting thing is that I've seen an evolution over the last 18 months in Alberta and in the region, Alberta, Saskatchewan, of a ton of support, right? So I think there's this groundswell of activity, right? And this is not a plug for TNT, but functions like Startup TNT, or we were at Uniting the Prairies recently. Or there's the Inventors Conference coming up, or even just some of the government support through Alberta Innovates, or the 500 coming to Alberta. I think these are really special things. GrowthX coming to Alberta, doing programming here, helping startups grow. I think it's really special. I saw a grid. I don't know. I'm sure, Jade, you've seen this, but I saw a grid from the mayor's office of all the startups in I think it's in Calgary, and sort of by number of employees, and some sort of big goals of number of people employed by this, by the tech startup industry, or more tech industry. That's amazing, right? Like, how amazing has has this openness to it? Because I remember when we started this, people were thinking, a lot of folks would say, "Are you crazy? Like, oil's a guaranteed thing." And so I think it's an evolution. So I don't know, Jay, I know this is sort of, you're chatting with me, but I'm curious your perspective. Like, do you see the same evolution, to see more folks more sort of support and encouragement. I think it's very encouraging.
Oh, and it has been, right. And I mean, that list is helped develop through the CIC that we have all, we have about 80 members there that meet on a monthly basis that talk about it. And it's not just talk about, like, oh, this is good and that's great. It's like, there's a portion there where we're saying, okay, do you have anybody that needs help? Like, do you know a startup? Do you know a founder? Do you know, like, here's your time to spew it out to 80 people that says, hey, yeah, I know somebody. If I don't, I know somebody. And I can't speak enough of that. And I mean, I've seen it evolve over the 8 years, and this is not a government podcast, but I've also seen, the great support. I mean, we all saw Minister Schweitzer saying he stepped away. I think he's doing a great job. I think Minister Gulbrich is doing a great job, right? They come, they speak to us, they shake hands, they kiss babies at the Alberta Technology Symposium that we hosted. And I mean, that's what you want to see, right? You want to see support from all levels. And again, when you said GrowthX, I met with the co-founder yesterday, Andrew. And
amazing.
Possibly going to get involved with that as well. So again, you're seeing these people come here because they're seeing, quality people like yourself start these businesses, and they want to be involved, help, and share.
And I'll be honest with you, like we've been very fortunate to land some Alberta Innovates funding recently. We participated in the 500. We're participating in GrowthX program that starts actually at 10 a.m. Today. So I think that's really encouraging, right? And I think it helps give businesses, especially when they're at that early stage, very high risk, to have a chance to make it, right?
I agree, right?
And we're doing our part, right? Like, we'll pay our taxes, and we're creating jobs. We have a very extensive intern program. So we have student interns with us. And I think it's because we as a leadership team have had great mentors, but also a lot of our team members have had great mentors along their journeys. And so how do we help others, right? And they seem to be having fun too. So
absolutely. You got to have fun along the way. There's got to be some laughs, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And that's a key, right? Key to life. You gotta laugh along the journey and make it enjoyable. Yes. And speaking of the journey, what's next for you guys?
Yeah, great question. So we are currently doing a pre-seed raise right now. We've had some great traction. We're continuing to grow our product. So we just finished our beta test of our accounting solution. We are now bringing our waitlist live. And so we're onboarding, learning about that process. We continue to kind of grow across Canada. We have a handful of customers across the country, which is amazing. And it's great to see that these early adopters are supporting us. And so we're growing. So we'll be at local trade shows, a bunch of online events to get the word out there, and then reaching out to folks as well. And it's what I think is most exciting is the fact that over like an 18-month span, and this is not about me, this is really about the team, but how we came together and created something in just a short span of time. So I don't know if we can stay on this journey and enjoy the ride as we go along. That's all we want.
Well, you gotta enjoy, you gotta smile.
Yeah, absolutely. Otherwise, I don't know how you do this.
I don't know. That's why we always say, right? You got an understanding wife, as do I. So thank God.
Amazing. Yes. Yeah. Understanding and amazing are understatements. So
it's absolutely.
Yeah.
Get our good plugs in while we can, right?
Let's tell her to watch.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to send you this. I'm just going to send you this 15 seconds, honey.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. So actually, I'm always sad when Hubert just walked by. He was my 100th guest. Hey, there he is in the background there, singing, "Hey, come in and say hi."
Hubert, how you doing?
That's one of the problems we had. Is actually our sound went. He had to phone my cell, and we figured it out. Right, the good thing about doing live. But if you had one piece of advice for a small business startup or entrepreneur, what would that be?
Yeah, I think it's something really simple, something like, undercommit and over-deliver, because that idea, that principle is really about being thoughtful about planning, being thoughtful about your burn and budgeting, and understand that it always takes longer than you think, right? So whenever someone tells me it's going to take, a week and, X number of dollars, I double the dollars and I double the time it's going to take. because if it ends up happening earlier, that's amazing, right?
Yeah.
But the problem with this is that you're charting new territory, and so because you are charting that new territory, I think it's just a matter of just get really good at planning, get really good at understanding, learn how to change your plan constantly. Actually, there's a second thing, which I want to add. I know there was
always a second thing,
and actually I'm going to add 3 because for me there's always 3 things. So number 1 is plan like crazy. Number 2, I think, is people. Is really think about the people that you're with. When I was consulting, one of the partners had talked to me about like this airport test, right? Is like, imagine you're in a small airport. The flight's at 7 a.m. It gets delayed till midnight. Could you survive with that other person? Assuming like very bare sort of environment. So I think people really matter. So number 1, again, planning. Number 2, people. I think number 3 is finding ability to like smile along the way and find balance, because it's a roller coaster, and it's a tough journey, and you have to be able to find joy and see the value of that experience and that growth. So don't just focus on the destination. Sorry, didn't want to say that, but you get the point.
I get the point. Yeah. It's always good, and that's always everyone's like, oh my God, I've got so many things I want to say. And I was like, well, you got to have one. And I think what I might do is one day is have an episode of just me going through hashing every single piece of advice that was given and just talking about it.
Yeah. I wonder how many like similar buckets you may end up with.
What do you think? I mean, I'm almost at 220 episodes, right? And I figured that this question would have been done a long time ago, right? But I get so many great answers with so many great, and some of them might be slimmer, but just a different little tidbit to it or whatever it is. And I just love it. I just love the advice. And that's why I started posting them on Fridays, just that one little clip. And, because I think it's important that other entrepreneurs hear the advice that, people that are going through the exact same things that you are, hear about.
Yeah, I do think there's something special, but you should do that. You should absolutely do that. I would suggest my evenings and weekends for you, but I'm busy with a startup.
I think that's probably something I should give Bobby a call and say, what, ask Betty should probably do this for me, and I'm going to pay for it because it's going to take way too much of my time.
Yeah, but that's it. There's something there. That could be a book actually, or at least a short something. So.
Oh, exactly. A little white paper.
Yeah.
Pure Guidance white paper. That has nothing to do with me. Oh, Al-Karim, I really appreciate you coming on, sharing your knowledge and sharing your story today. Thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure to get to know you over the last year or so. And I'm looking forward to seeing you in person again next week at Inventures.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you much for the opportunity. And, love telling the story, but also just love being part of this technology ecosystem. And Craig and I are really grateful for the chance to share. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. And to everybody, thank you for tuning in. And we will see you next Wednesday, where we have the ladies from C-Tech West talking about entrepreneur to CEO.